Is this you, slaving away hauling statues, moving barely 2 feet a minute, just to find out you placed one wrong and you'll have to start all over? Maybe you're an intellectual who used to use fossils just to find out Clay nerfed them to the ground a few patches ago. Or maybe it's been 6 years and your family's been begging you, please, just stop hammering the stagehand and come home. Whichever it is, I know you hate it, but you have to use one of these for mob farms in DST, right? Well, what if I told you none of these are special? That in fact every structure in this game can do the exact same thing? Well, maybe that'd be a bit of an exaggeration, but let's dive into this and see if we can find some alternatives that will let you keep the last bit of hair that you haven't pulled out from working from statues. Hello, you poor starving exiles. This is Technically Starving, and today we're going to be doing a deep dive on structures and pathfinding, and don't starve together. Don't starve together, there are 3 types of structures: tangible, intangible, and walls. Starting with the simplest of these, we have intangibles. They're things that can be placed down but can walk right over. They include things like chests, lightning rods, grass, and many other plants. A player might be able to interact with these, such as opening a chest, but mobs can't physically interact with them, except to crush them underfoot, so they're not of any interest in this video. Next we have the smallest group, walls. There are only 11 types of walls in this game, if you include fences, gates, and scaffolds. All of these share 2 key pathfinding properties. Mobs can't walk through them, and mobs know that. Instead of walking into a wall, most mobs will try to pathfind around them, even if it means going hundreds of blocks out of the way. Even Deerclops tries to path around walls when attacking a player, though he's so dummy thick he'll accidentally destroy all the corners he takes. If there's absolutely no way around walls though, most hostile mobs will run straight towards their target and destroy every wall in their path, quickly tearing through the relatively low HP. This makes walls mostly useless defensively, and they're mainly just used for decoration or to contain friendly mobs. This brings us to our final group, tangible structures. These are all other structures, which means the majority of structures in this game are actually tangible. Think things like pig houses, science machines, environmental structures, and yes, statues. Unlike walls, mobs don't pathfind around tangible structures, but they can't attack or walk through them either. So mobs will walk right into them and get stuck unless they accidentally slide off. This is why people use statues in mob farms. They're essentially indestructible walls. But as I said, statues aren't special in this regard. So rather than wasting an hour playing statues around your moonstone, just place a few science machines and you'll have the easiest, most effective mob farm around. Or not. While all tangible structures share the same pathfinding behavior, there are 2 important differences between them: their hitbox and their build radius. All structures in this game have a minimum distance they can be placed from similar structures. The default distance is 3.2 walls, but this is far too wide as almost nothing has a hitbox over 1 wall wide. Fortunately, there are a number of structures that have smaller build radiuses. Finding one with a decently sized hitbox as well, though, is quite rare. So rare, in fact, it's not surprising only a few options have ever been found. You'd need to go through every structure in the game just to find a new one. Lucky for y'all, I did just that. Here you can see all the tangible structures in the game with the right build radius and hitbox to make walls. Like I said, there aren't many. You might think most of these are new to the recent Staying Afloat update where they reduced the spacing of a bunch of structures, but it's actually the opposite. They made sure to only lower the spacing on smaller hitbox items and actually increased it for a few of the structures that used to work, notably fossils and the Magician's Chest. But these 15 still work, and they have for some time. A third of them are heavy objects with almost no advantage over sculptures, so you can forget about them right away. The Houndius and lamps both require rare boss items, so they're probably too expensive for any use. But maybe if you're using Houndiuses for a farm, you could incorporate them. Similarly, I think skeletons are too expensive to consider at 1 life each. As for the rest, they all require some degree of progress or condition to be met, making the best option somewhat situational. but they can all be made entirely from farmable materials, which means we now have fully renewable, easy to place walls. The cheapest option is arguably the carrot gems. Lucky golden nuggets can be easily obtained in bulk from many of the New Year's events, and can be automated. The only downside with these is you'd be turning on off-season events, and not everyone likes doing that. They also take up inventory space or require a shrine, which can make accessing them a little tricky. Functionally, they're all identical, so just pick whichever one you like the best look of best. Next cheapest would be the wooden tables. 2 boards and a rope is dirt cheap, but they do require visiting the ruins in Pearls Island, so they're not exactly early game. For those wondering, no, you can't use the relic tables to skip the trips to Pearls Island. Biggest drawback to these tables is that they're more difficult to use as they need to be placed closer than the geometric placement mod will allow. Tables have a build radius of 1.75 walls, but the geometric placement only allows you to place things every 0.5. You can easily turn off the mod by pressing Control, but not using it risks a greater problem of misaligning the tables and creating gaps. Plus, corners get real weird, as the tables will never be placed exactly the same on both sides. The hitbox is generous enough, though, that they're certainly a viable option. I mean, console players manage without geometric positions all the time, right? Next, we have cannons. These just take a trip to the Moonkey Island, which has never been easier to find because of the recent update, making them great for any world without caves. Palmcombs are easily farmed like any other tree once you get a few, and cannons can actually be an active part of the designs because monkeys will fire the cannons. But that's an idea that has to wait for another video. End tables have been known about for a while, so I won't talk too in depth about them. Just hammer the recipe out of the stagehand and make sure you have a bunch of marble. The Royal DIY kit is a funny one. They are a word exclusive and take an obscene amount of wood and grass, but they're available day one, and they're big enough that you'll end up using less of them than any other option here. Just remember not to complete the build or you're going to lose their hitbox. Finally, we have totally normal trees. If you didn't know, you can craft an experiment during Hollow Nights to plant them. I don't know if I'd call this a serious option, though, as it takes a lot of sanity and evil logs, plus you need to turn on the event to use it year-round. You're better off sticking to the rat gems in that case. But I suppose if you have a wormwood, you might as well use them. Now, all of those should work with no problem, but if you test out other structures, you might notice there are plenty that can be placed close enough you can't walk through them. The problem is the gap is large enough that mobs can still glitch through them if pushed. This makes these structures unreliable for anything that involves more than one mob. Did some testing and had no issues with a gap of 0.55 walls or less, but gaps of 0.7 only glitched occasionally. If you for some reason only need to hold one mob, or are okay with occasional leaks, you could be more flexible with your structure. All the structures shown here have a gap of 0.6 to 0.7 walls. I also provided a link in the description for the spreadsheets I did all these calculations in. Feel free to leave a comment if I got anything wrong. I got the value straight from the code, but it is a little weird, so I could have read something wrong. Prior to the Staying Afloat update, only the spacing of the section structure placed mattered. So you can place low-spaced structures next to large ones that are much cheaper, like trees. Originally, this was going to be the meat of this video, and I actually had written the whole script based off of this before the update sunk with the whole idea. But you can still mix structures, if in a weaker form. The new system uses the average spacing of the two objects, which works out so that the gap is the average too. This allows you to actually use structures in the honorable mention category without leaks by combining them with structures from the smallest gaps of the first group. This is actually necessary for using masts, as they have a much larger spacing when placed close together, but not when placed near other structures. So if you want to use all your silk or any other resource included in the honorable mention category, you absolutely can. Just make sure the average gap is 0.55 or less, and that you're placing them as close as possible. But it does need to be asked if any of these alternatives are cheaper than the main structures. Thankfully, there is one last alternative that is undeniably cheaper. In fact, it's one everybody already knows about, even if they don't use it to its full potential. The most famous example of this option is the Dragonfly strategy. In case you didn't know, you can cheese part of the Dragonfly fight by placing walls around a magma pool. This causes the larvas to get stuck on the pool until they die, effectively eliminating them from the fight. This works because pools are, you guessed it, tangible structures. But what people don't realize is the same thing can be done with most tangible structures, and nearly every mob. Don't like where your lava pools are? Just place a structure down wherever you wished it was, and use that. Tired of MacTusk running away? Place a structure down surrounded by walls and laugh as he runs into it. Possibilities are endless, and this trick is dirt cheap at only 1 stone per wall. Setting it up is pretty straightforward. The most important thing is to use a structure that will fill the gap. Prior to the staying afloat update, nearly every structure worked, but now it's a much shorter list. Math is somewhat complicated because walls are locked to a larger grid, but you can use structures with up to twice the gap as before, if their spacing is right. I've included estimates of this wall gap for all structures in the linked spreadsheet as well. There are plenty of great options, but I think the best are probably palm cone trees, crockpots, and wooden tables. Alternatively, you can also use nearby environmental structures like ponds, rocks, or cave-in boulders. Just about everything other than trees should work well. Another thing you'll want to be careful about is making sure there are enough walls on both sides that going through the gap is shorter. Unlike with tangible structures, mobs won't walk into walls, but instead go to whichever end is closer. This can be a good thing, as they'll clump and be less likely to slide off the sides, but it can fail disastrously if you're standing in the wrong spot and they decide to go around. Now, I'm sure some of you are wondering, won't the mobs just attack the walls? Well, yes and no. Most mobs actually can't attack walls, though the ones that can are quite common. But even if they can attack walls, they only do so under certain conditions. For most mobs, including all spiders, they only attack walls when chasing something. This can be avoided by not aggroing them or quickly losing aggro if you do. Instead, if you want to move spiders, you should use bait with some kind of meat because they will never attack walls when chasing food. That applies doubly so to werepigs, who will attack walls even when without something to chase, but who prioritize food over everything else. Wild hounds are probably the one mob this won't work for, since they attack walls by default and prioritize attacking everything in sight over food. James Bucket has a strat that kinda works for hounds, link in the description, but it's much more expensive with the recent update. This strat works because mobs only attack walls if they run into them, and they do actively try to maintain a small distance from them. It's usually only when pushed by other mobs that they come into contact enough to attack a wall. You can play around with layouts like this to see if something works, but you're probably better off just using a full structure wall for hounds. Besides these common mobs, there are a few unique situations where mobs attack walls. Penguins attack them on the way to their nests. Deer attack them when running away. And moose goose attack them on sight, but weirdly enough, not when aggroed on a player. And I'm sure there are others I don't know about, so make sure to do some playtesting before you build a huge farm for a new mob. You'll also want to be careful when working with flank mobs. They don't attack walls, usually, but you might find that they don't want to go where you want them to. This is because fleeing mobs use a different pathfinding algorithm, which just tries to run in the opposite direction from you. If that would run them into a wall, they don't find the shortest path around it, but instead run away from it too. If you chase them perfectly into a gap with a tangible structure, they'll get stuck, but more often you'll get the angle wrong and they'll go off in the completely wrong direction. One solution is to use a bigger gap. 4 to 5 walls of a gap should be enough where you can manage to lead them into it reliably. Even better, though, is to just completely surround the mob in walls. If there's no other path, normal pathfinding kicks in and they'll run right into the gap. And that really is the most powerful way to use this trick. By adding a single tangible structure to an enclosure, you can not only make it so that 90% of the mobs don't attack it, but also corral them all to that gap to farm them. This works for nearly every mob, passive and hostile. You just need to find something that'll get them moving. There's so much you can do with this that I can't even scratch the surface in this video. Instead, I plan to do a few farm guides highlighting specific mobs. So let me know in the comments if there's one in particular you'd like me to do. That's all for now. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're interested in new farm ideas. Most importantly, don't starve.